I was invisible for 3 years. Then two brothers saw me at once, and that's when everything shattered. What happens when the man who never looked finally does, but only after someone else already has? When silence becomes survival, and survival becomes a cage. This is the story of a woman who refused to be a consolation prize. A story of pride, blindness, and the brutal cost of seeing too late. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Because what Eliza Harrow did, it changed everything. The rain came down in sheets that November afternoon, turning the gravel drive of Blackthorn Hall into a mud-slicked nightmare. Eliza Harrow stood at the window of the drawing room, one hand pressed against the cold glass, watching the carriages arrive. Guests for the week. More people to manage, more rooms to prepare, more invisible work that kept the house running while she herself remained unseen. She'd learned to prefer it that way. Miss Harrow? Mrs. Pemberton's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. The housekeeper appeared in the doorway, her face pinched with its usual displeasure. Lady Ashford requires her tea service changed, the porcelain set, not the china. She says the china gives her a headache. Eliza didn't turn from the window. The porcelain is already in her room. I had it sent up an hour ago. A pause, then grudgingly. Very well. Mrs. Pemberton left without thanks. She never did. Eliza had stopped expecting it somewhere around month 6 of her employment. Now, 3 years in, she'd perfected the art of anticipating needs before they were spoken, solving problems before they became crises, and maintaining the illusion that the house ran itself. It didn't, of course. It ran on her. She turned from the window and surveyed the drawing room with a practiced eye. Fresh flowers on the mantel, white roses, Lady Ashford's favorite. The fire built just high enough to warm without overheating. Books arranged on the side table in a careful spread that suggested casual elegance rather than calculated staging. Every detail perfect, every detail invisible, just like her. Eliza. She startled at the voice. Charlotte Ashford stood in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl despite the warmth of the fire, her pale face drawn with fatigue. Eliza's employer, though the word felt inadequate for what Charlotte actually was. Distant cousin. Childhood friend. The woman whose family had taken Eliza in after the bankruptcy destroyed everything. Companion, they called it. A polite word for neither servant nor family. You shouldn't be up, Eliza said, moving toward her. The physician says a great many things. Charlotte waved a dismissive hand, but she sank gratefully into the chair Eliza guided her toward. Most of them tedious. Did the Haverford party arrive? 20 minutes ago. I've had their rooms prepared. Eliza knelt to adjust the footstool beneath Charlotte's feet. Lord Haverford brought his hunting dogs. I've arranged for them to be kennelled in the east wing, away from your rooms. Charlotte's laugh was soft, tired. You think of everything. Someone has to. Adrian certainly doesn't. Charlotte's voice carried an edge of bitterness. My dear brother-in-law sees nothing beyond his ledgers and his duty. I sometimes wonder if he knows he employs a staff at all, or if he believes the house maintains itself through sheer aristocratic will. Eliza said nothing. She'd learned that silence was safest when the conversation turned to the Duke of Blackthorn. Adrian Vale was a presence in the house more than a person, a cold, distant figure who appeared at meals, signed documents in his study, and otherwise existed in a sphere so separate from hers that they might as well inhabit different buildings. She'd seen him, of course. Everyone saw the Duke. Tall, dark-haired, with the kind of severe handsomeness that looked carved rather than born. He moved through rooms like winter itself, all sharp angles and frost, leaving cold air in his wake. But he'd never seen her. 3 years. 3 years of managing his household. 3 years of ensuring his comfort. 3 years of existing in the same space. He'd looked through her perhaps a dozen times, his gaze sliding past as if she were furniture. Once, she'd handed him a letter directly. His fingers had brushed hers taking it, and his eyes hadn't even flickered in her direction. That was fine. That was safe. Eliza had learned the rules of this world the hard way. A gentlewoman without fortune was a ghost, too educated to be a servant, too poor to be a peer. The Harrow name meant nothing now. Her father's debts had seen to that. The bankruptcy hadn't just taken their money, it had taken their place in society, their friends, their future. Everything. Charlotte's family had offered refuge, but refuge came with a price. Gratitude, deference, the constant awareness that she existed here on borrowed grace, and that borrowed grace could be revoked at any moment. So Eliza made herself useful, indispensable even. She managed the household with ruthless efficiency, handled Charlotte's correspondence, navigated the social complexities of a country estate with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. She made Charlotte's life easier, made the house run smoother, made herself too valuable to discard. And she stayed invisible. It was easier that way. Safer. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore, and wanting things, wanting to be seen, to be valued as more than a useful shadow, that was dangerous. That led to disappointment, to pain. Better to accept what was. Better to survive. "I worry about you," Charlotte said suddenly. She was watching Eliza with those two perceptive eyes, the ones that sometimes saw more than Eliza wanted to reveal. "You're 26, Eliza. You should have a life of your own, a home, I have a home." Eliza stood, brushing imaginary dust from her skirt. "I have work. I have purpose. That's more than many women can claim." "You have a half-life." Charlotte's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. "You exist in service to everyone but yourself. That's not living, darling. That's just enduring." Eliza forced a smile. "Then I endure well." Before Charlotte could respond, voices erupted in the entrance hall. Male voices, one of them laughing with unrestrained delight. Charlotte's expression shifted from concern to something brighter. "Julian," she breathed. "He's here." Eliza had heard of Julian Vale, of course. The Duke's younger brother, off traveling the continent for the past 4 years. The spare to the heir. The one who'd escaped the suffocating weight of Blackthorn Hall in duty and expectation. The lucky one. Charlotte was already standing, her fatigue apparently forgotten. "Come. You must meet him. Well, you'll see. He's nothing like Adrian." That proved to be an understatement. Julian Vale burst into the drawing room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Where Adrian was winter, Julian was summer itself, golden-haired, blue-eyed, with a smile that seemed to take up half his face. He swept Charlotte into an embrace that lifted her off her feet, spinning her once before setting her down with exaggerated care. "Careful, careful, you'll break our delicate flower," he teased, though his eyes held genuine concern as he studied Charlotte's pale face. "Though you look better than your letters suggested. Either you've been exaggerating your illness for sympathy, or someone here has been taking exceptional care of you." "The latter." Charlotte gestured toward Eliza, who'd retreated to the window, trying to fade into the background as usual. "This is Miss Harrow, my companion. Eliza, my brother-in-law, Julian Vale." Julian's attention swung toward her, and Eliza braced herself for the usual reaction, the polite nod, the brief acknowledgement, the swift dismissal. Companions weren't interesting. They weren't meant to be noticed. But Julian didn't look away. He crossed the room in 3 strides, hand extended. "Miss Harrow, Charlotte's letters have been full of your praises, though she clearly undersold you." Eliza blinked. What?" "You're younger than I expected. Prettier, too." His grin was shameless. "When Charlotte wrote about her invaluable companion, I pictured someone, well, significantly more battle-axe-like. My apologies for the assumption." Heat crept up Eliza's neck. She shook his hand briefly, trying to process this bizarre interaction. "I assure you I can be quite battle-axe-like when the situation demands it." Julian laughed. A real laugh, full and warm. "I don't doubt it. Anyone who can manage this mausoleum and its inhabitants would need a spine of steel." He glanced around the drawing room. "Though I see you've made it less sepulchral than I remember. Are those actually fresh flowers? In November? However did you manage it?" "The greenhouse," Eliza said automatically. "We rebuilt it last spring. Lady Ashford enjoys roses. See?" Julian turned to Charlotte triumphantly. "Invaluable. Does Adrian know what a treasure he has under his roof?" Charlotte's expression turned wry. "Adrian barely knows the house has a roof." "Typical." Julian shook his head, but there was affection in his exasperation. "My brother could calculate the exact yield of every acre of the estate, but ask him to notice anything happening under his own ceiling, and you'd have better luck teaching a stone to dance." Eliza should have stayed silent, should have smiled politely and excused herself. That was the safe play, the smart play. Instead, she heard herself say, "To be fair, the stone might have more natural rhythm." The words were out before she could stop them. For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Then Julian threw back his head and laughed, loud and delighted. "Oh, I like you. Charlotte, you've been hiding a gem. Miss Harrow, please tell me you'll join us for dinner. I need someone with actual wit at the table, or I'll die of boredom before the second course." "Companions don't typically," Eliza began. "Typically is a prison." Julian waved off her objection. "You're Charlotte's friend, aren't you? Her cousin? Then you're family. And if my brother has a problem with that, well, he can take it up with me." Before Eliza could formulate a response, the drawing room door opened again. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Adrian Vale stood in the doorway. He was dressed for riding, his dark coat still damp from the rain, his expression carved from ice. Those cold gray eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Julian, then Charlotte, then sliding past Eliza as if she were part of the wallpaper. "You're here," he said to Julian. Not a greeting, a statement of fact. "Astute as ever, brother." Julian's tone was light, but Eliza caught the slight tension in his shoulders. 4 years away, and that's the welcome I get? Not even a hello? How was your travels? Your travels were documented extensively in your letters. Adrian stepped into the room, and somehow the space felt smaller. "I trust you're well." "Extraordinarily well. I've just met the magnificent Miss Harrow." Julian gestured toward Eliza. "Charlotte's been keeping her hidden away like a shameful secret. Have you met?" Adrian's gaze finally landed on Eliza. For one brief, heart-stopping moment, she thought he might actually see her. His eyes passed over her face with all the interest one might give a coat rack. "I'm sure we've been introduced," he said vaguely. Then to Julian, "The Haverford party is expecting you in the billiard room. They arrived an hour ago." "Then they can wait another hour. I'm catching up with Charlotte." Julian's jaw had set in a way that suggested this wasn't entirely about Charlotte. "I've been gone 4 years, Adrian. Surely the social niceties can survive my absence for one afternoon." Something flickered in Adrian's expression. Irritation, maybe, or something darker. "As you wish. But Lord Haverford brought his son, the one interested in the India trade ventures. I thought you might want to discuss—" "Business." Julian's laugh was sharp. "Of course, always business with you. Do you ever think about anything else?" "Someone has to." Adrian's voice could have frozen fire. "The estate doesn't run on charm and good intentions." "No, it runs on Miss Harrow's competence, apparently." Julian smiled, but there was an edge to it now. "Charlotte tells me she's single-handedly kept this place from falling into chaos. Perhaps you should try thanking her instead of ignoring her existence." The room went very, very quiet. Eliza wished the floor would open up and swallow her. Adrian's gaze swung back toward her, and this time there was something in it. Not recognition exactly, but a kind of cold assessment, like he was seeing a problem that needed solving. "I'm sure Miss Harrow performs her duties adequately," he said. Each word was clipped, precise. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have correspondence to attend to." He left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him with finality. "Well," Charlotte said into the silence, "that went about as well as expected." Julian was staring at the closed door, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Eliza, and the charm was back, but there was something else underneath it now, something harder. "I apologize for my brother," he said quietly. "He's not always so—" "Impossible?" Charlotte suggested. "I was going to say oblivious, but impossible works too." Julian's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Miss Harrow, that dinner invitation stands. In fact, I insist. If nothing else, it will irritate Adrian, and that alone makes it worthwhile." Eliza should have declined, should have retreated to her proper place, her safe invisibility. But something had shifted in that brief, awful exchange. Something in the way Julian had defended her, in the way Adrian had dismissed her so casually, in the way she'd felt for just a moment like a person rather than a function. "I'd be honored," she heard herself say. Julian's grin was triumphant. Charlotte looked worried, and Eliza felt, for the first time in 3 years, like she'd just stepped off a cliff. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The house party was in full swing, which meant Eliza's usual duties doubled. She managed seating arrangements, coordinated the servants, ensured the guest rooms were maintained, mediated disputes between cook and housekeeper, and somehow still found time to keep Charlotte comfortable and entertained. But now there was Julian. He appeared everywhere. In the library when Eliza was selecting Charlotte's reading material. In the conservatory when she was cutting flowers. In the hallway when she was reviewing the day's menu with Mrs. Pemberton. And unlike everyone else in the house, he talked to her, not at her, not through her, to her. "What are you reading?" he asked one afternoon, finding her in the library with a book she'd stolen 10 minutes of peace to enjoy. Eliza looked up, startled. "Oh, it's nothing. A novel." "Which novel?" He crossed to her chair, genuinely curious. "Evelina, I've read it before, but it's brilliant, so why not read it again?" Julian smiled. "Fanny Burney doesn't get the credit she deserves. Everyone's obsessed with the Gothics now, but give me a sharp social satire any day." Eliza stared at him. "You've read Evelina? Don't sound so shocked. I read extensively. Spent most of my time abroad in libraries, actually. Drove my traveling companions mad." He perched on the arm of a nearby chair. "What do you think of her treatment of the Branghtons? Too harsh or perfectly observed?" And just like that, they were discussing literature. Actually discussing it. Debating character motivations, arguing about social commentary, laughing over particular scenes. Eliza couldn't remember the last time she'd had a conversation like this. Charlotte was wonderful, but her illness limited her energy. The other household members treated Eliza like a superior servant at best, but Julian talked to her like an equal. It was intoxicating, dangerous. "You're educated," he said at one point, his tone curious rather than accusatory, "more than most women of your station." "My father believed in education for daughters as well as sons." Eliza's voice tightened. "He hired tutors for me alongside my brother. Literature, history, languages, mathematics. He said ignorance was the only true poverty." Past tense. Eliza closed the book. "He died 5 years ago. Debts, bankruptcy, the usual tragic tale." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's ancient history." She stood, needing to move, to break the sudden intimacy of the conversation. "I should check on Charlotte. She'll be waking from her rest soon." "Eliza." She stopped. He'd never used her given name before. "You don't have to run away every time someone shows you basic kindness," Julian said quietly. "It's allowed, you know, being treated like a person." Her throat felt tight. "I am treated like a person." "You're treated like a very useful piece of furniture." He stood, moving closer. "There's a difference." "This is my life, Julian. This is what I have, and I've made peace with it." "Have you?" His blue eyes were too perceptive. "Or have you just convinced yourself that surviving is the same as living?" Charlotte had said something similar. Eliza wondered when she'd become so transparent. "I need to go," she said. This time, he let her. Dinner that night was an elaborate affair. 16 guests around the massive mahogany table in the formal dining room. Eliza had been seated near the middle, between a merchant's wife who talked exclusively about her daughter's upcoming wedding and an elderly baron who was slightly deaf. She was far enough from the head of the table, where Adrian presided with his usual cold efficiency, to feel safe from his notice. But she was directly across from Julian. He caught her eye halfway through the third course and smiled. Just a small smile, quick and private, like they were sharing a secret. Eliza felt something flutter in her chest, something she'd thought long dead. Hope. Later, when the ladies retired to the drawing room for tea, Julian appeared at her elbow. "Walk with me," he said quietly. "I can't. I need to." "Charlotte is fine. She's surrounded by guests and enjoying herself. You're allowed to take a breath, Eliza." He guided her out onto the terrace before she could protest. The night air was cool, sharp with the promise of frost. The garden stretched out before them, dark and mysterious under the half-moon. "Do you ever just stop?" Julian asked. "Or are you always working?" "Work gives me purpose." "Purpose is important, but so is joy." He leaned against the stone balustrade. "When was the last time you did something purely because it made you happy?" Eliza thought about it, really thought about it. She couldn't remember. "That's what I thought." Julian's voice was gentle. "You're starving yourself, Eliza. Not of food, but of life, of happiness. of being seen. Being seen is dangerous. Being invisible is worse. She should have argued, should have defended her carefully constructed existence. But standing there in the moonlight with Julian looking at her like she was worth looking at, all her arguments felt hollow. "I don't know how to be anything else," she admitted. "This is who I am now." "No," Julian said firmly. "This is who you've had to become to survive. But you're more than survival, Eliza. You're brilliant and witty and strong and—" "Julian." Adrian's voice cut through the night like a blade. He stood in the terrace doorway, backlit by the drawing room lights. Eliza couldn't see his expression, but she could feel the cold rage radiating off him. "A word," Adrian said. "Not a request." Julian straightened slowly. "We're having a conversation, brother. It can wait." "Now." The single word carried absolute authority. This wasn't the Duke speaking to his brother. This was the master of the estate issuing a command. Julian's jaw tightened. For a moment, Eliza thought he might refuse. Then he gave her an apologetic smile. "I'll return shortly." He followed Adrian into the house. Through the glass doors, Eliza could see them in the hallway beyond. Two figures in sharp confrontation. Adrian's gestures were controlled but emphatic. Julian's were expansive, defensive. They were arguing about something. About her, Eliza realized with growing horror. Adrian was angry that Julian was paying her attention. Not because he cared about her. Because it was improper. Because it disrupted the social order. Because companions were meant to be invisible. And Julian was making her visible. Eliza turned away from the terrace, from the argument, from all of it. She slipped back into the drawing room through a side door, made her excuses to Charlotte, and escaped to her room. She didn't sleep that night. And the next morning, when she came down to breakfast, everything had changed. Adrian was there, at a breakfast. He never attended breakfast. He was seated at the head of the table, newspaper in hand, as if his presence were perfectly normal. And when Eliza entered, his eyes lifted. For the first time in 3 years, Adrian Vale looked directly at her, really looked. Eliza felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing. It wasn't warm. Adrian didn't do warmth, but it was attention, recognition. She hated how her pulse quickened. "Miss Harrow," he said. Her name in his voice sounded foreign. "I trust you slept well." It was a polite nothing, the kind of thing you said to guests. But from Adrian, it felt seismic. "Very well, Your Grace." She took her seat, careful to keep her hands steady as she reached for the tea. "Thank you for asking." Across the table, Julian was watching his brother with barely concealed suspicion. The game, Eliza realized, had just begun, and she had no idea what the rules were. The attention didn't stop. Over the next week, Adrian appeared at breakfast every morning. He asked Eliza questions, polite, surface-level things about the household, about Charlotte's health, about the guest arrangements. Nothing personal. Nothing that suggested actual interest in her as a person. But it was attention. And after 3 years of invisibility, attention felt like standing too close to a fire. Eliza didn't trust it. "He's doing it to irritate me," Julian said one afternoon. They were in the music room, Eliza sorting through sheet music for Charlotte's evening entertainment, Julian lounging across the piano bench like he owned it. "Adrian can't stand that I see you, so now he's pretending he's seen you all along." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Julian sat up, his expression unusually serious. "My brother is a master strategist, Eliza. He doesn't do anything without calculation. And right now, he's calculated that the best way to control this situation is to stake his own claim." "I'm not territory to be claimed." "I know that. You know that. Does Adrian know that?" Julian ran a hand through his golden hair, frustrated. He's never cared about the household staff before. Never learned their names, never acknowledged their existence beyond signing their wages. But suddenly he knows yours? Suddenly he's asking about your day. Eliza's hand stilled on the sheet music. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying my brother doesn't like losing." Julian's blue eyes were sharp. "And he especially doesn't like losing to me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. "This isn't a competition," Eliza said quietly. "Everything is a competition with Adrian." Julian stood, crossing to where she sat. "But you're right. You're not a prize to be won. You're a woman who deserves to be valued for who you are, not used as a pawn in some aristocratic power struggle." He took her hand. The gesture was gentle, tentative. "I value you," he said. "These past weeks, getting to know you. Eliza, you're extraordinary. Your mind, your strength, the way you navigate this world with grace despite everything it's taken from you. I've traveled across Europe, met countless people, and not one of them has impressed me the way you do. Eliza's heart was hammering. Julian, I'm not trying to claim you either, he said quickly. I'm just telling you the truth. You deserve to hear it. You deserve to know that someone sees you, really sees you, and thinks you're remarkable. She should have pulled her hand away, should have reminded him of propriety, of her position, of the impossible gap between a duke's brother and a penniless companion. But his words felt like water after years of drought. Thank you, she whispered. The music room door opened. Adrian stood in the doorway. His gray eyes went immediately to their joined hands. Something flickered across his face, too quick to read, too controlled to interpret. Charlotte is asking for you, he said to Eliza. His voice was perfectly neutral. She's in the conservatory. Julian didn't release her hand. Charlotte can wait 5 minutes. She specifically requested Miss Harrow's immediate assistance. Then I'm sure Miss Harrow will go when she's ready. Julian's tone had gone sharp. She's not a servant you can summon at will, Adrian. I'm aware of her position in this household. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you've spent 3 years treating her like furniture, and now that someone else has noticed her value, you're suddenly proprietary. Adrian's jaw tightened. I don't have time for your dramatics, Julian. Miss Harrow, Charlotte is waiting. Eliza gently extracted her hand from Julian's. I should go. You don't have to. How? I do. She stood, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled slightly. Charlotte needs me. She moved toward the door, toward Adrian. He stepped aside to let her pass, and for a moment they were close enough that she could smell the faint scent of his cologne. Something clean and cold, like winter air. His eyes met hers. Really met them, for the first time with something that wasn't dismissal or cold assessment. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything you do for Charlotte, for this house. I realize I've never properly expressed my appreciation. The words should have pleased her. 3 years of invisible labor finally acknowledged. Instead, they felt like an insult. Your appreciation is noted, Your Grace. Her voice was colder than she'd intended. Now, if you'll excuse me, Lady Ashford is waiting. She left before he could respond. Behind her, she heard Julian laugh, a short, bitter sound. Well done, brother, truly masterful. Tell me, did you practice that speech, or was it purely instinctual condescension? Eliza didn't wait to hear Adrian's response. She walked quickly through the corridors, her composure fracturing with each step. Charlotte wasn't in the conservatory. She was in her sitting room, embroidery in her lap, looking perfectly comfortable. You weren't asking for me, Eliza said. Charlotte looked up, startled. No, why would you think... Her expression cleared. Adrian told you I was? He did. Interesting. Charlotte set aside her embroidery. Come, sit. Tell me what happened. Eliza sank into the chair across from her, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what's happening. A week ago, I was invisible. Now I'm the center of some bizarre rivalry I never asked to be part of. Julian's fallen for you. It wasn't a question. He's infatuated, Eliza corrected. There's a difference. He's been away from society for 4 years. I'm educated, I can hold a conversation. I'm a novelty. It'll pass. And Adrian? Adrian doesn't care about me. He cares about control. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. He can't stand that Julian sees me as a person instead of a function. So now he's pretending he's cared all along, offering belated gratitude like it erases 3 years of being ignored. Charlotte was quiet for a moment. You're angry? I'm furious. The admission felt dangerous. Eliza had spent 3 years suppressing every emotion that might threaten her position, her safety, her survival. I've worked myself to exhaustion for this household. I've managed every detail, solved every problem, made everyone's lives easier. And I did it invisibly, gratefully, because that was the price of having a roof over my head. But I was still a person, Charlotte. I was still here. I know. And now, because his brother noticed me, suddenly Adrian sees me too? Suddenly I'm worth acknowledging? Eliza's hands were shaking. It's not real. It's strategy. I'm a problem he's solving, not a person he values. Charlotte reached across and took Eliza's hand. You're right to be angry, and you're right about Adrian's motives. My brother-in-law is brilliant at estate management and absolutely hopeless at human connection. He operates on logic and control, and right now you represent a variable he can't predict. So what do I do? What do you want to do? Eliza laughed, a broken sound. I don't know. For 3 years I've wanted to be seen, to matter. And now that it's happening, I hate it. Because it's not real. Julian's attention is genuine, but it's also impossible. And Adrian's attention is calculated, which makes it worse than nothing at all. Is Julian's attention impossible? Charlotte asked carefully. He's the brother of a duke. I'm a penniless companion. Of course it's impossible. Julian doesn't care about that. Society cares about it. His family cares about it. And eventually he'll care about it too. Eliza pulled her hand free, standing. I need to work. I need to do something useful. Eliza, please, Charlotte, I just need to work. Charlotte let her go. The rest of the day passed in a blur of tasks. Eliza threw herself into work with almost frantic energy, reorganizing the linen closet, updating the household accounts, reviewing menus for the following week. Anything to avoid thinking, feeling, wanting. But at dinner, she couldn't avoid either brother. The seating had been rearranged. Eliza found herself placed between Lord Haverford's elderly mother and Julian, and directly across from Adrian. It was no coincidence. Someone had changed the placements. Julian leaned close as they sat. I had nothing to do with this. Mrs. Pemberton said Adrian requested the new arrangement. Eliza's stomach nodded. Across the table, Adrian was engaged in conversation with Lady Haverford, his expression composed and distant as always. But she could feel his awareness of her like a physical weight. Dinner was torture. Every time Eliza spoke, she felt Adrian's attention shift to her. Every time Julian made her laugh, she saw Adrian's fingers tighten on his wine glass. The tension stretched across the table like a wire pulled too tight, ready to snap. Miss Harrow, Adrian said during the fourth course. His voice cut through the general conversation like a knife. Julian mentioned you're well read. What are you reading currently? The table went quiet. A duke addressing a companion directly was unusual enough to draw notice. Nothing of consequence, Your Grace. Eliza kept her voice level. Just novels to pass the time. Which novels? It was a trap. She could feel it. Answer too intelligently and she'd seem presumptuous. Answer too simply and she'd seem dishonest. Fanny Burney, primarily, she said. Evelina. Ah, yes. The one about the young woman navigating society without proper connections. Adrian's gray eyes were unreadable. I'm told it's quite instructive. The barb was subtle, but it landed. Julian's voice was dangerous. I wouldn't know, Adrian. I tend to read for pleasure rather than instruction. How fortunate that you can afford such luxuries. And how unfortunate that you can't. The exchange was pleasant on the surface, two brothers trading remarks. But underneath ran currents of anger and challenge that made the other guests shift uncomfortably. Lord Haverford cleared his throat. Your Grace, I wanted to discuss the timber contracts. Not at dinner. Adrian's tone was final. His eyes never left Julian. My brother was just telling us about his travels. Please, Julian, regale us with tales of the continent. It was a dismissal, a reduction, turning Julian into entertainment, his experiences into party tricks. Julian smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. Actually, I was just about to ask Miss Harrow for a dance later this evening. That is, if she's willing. Every eye at the table turned to Eliza. She wanted to refuse, wanted to excuse herself, to disappear, to return to the safety of invisibility. But something in Adrian's expression, something cold and presumptuous, like he expected her to decline, expected her to know her place, made her reckless. I'd be delighted, she said. Julian's grin was triumphant. Adrian's face went very still. The rest of dinner passed in strained civility. When the ladies withdrew to the drawing room, Charlotte pulled Eliza aside. What are you doing? I don't know. This is dangerous. You're playing with fire, and you're going to get burned. I'm already burning. Eliza's voice was tight. At least this way I choose how. The dancing started an hour later. The furniture in the drawing room had been pushed back to create space. Someone played the pianoforte, badly but enthusiastically. It was informal, casual. the kind of impromptu entertainment that happened during house parties. Julian claimed Eliza immediately. He was an excellent dancer, light on his feet, confident in his lead. He guided her through the steps with easy grace, smiling down at her like she was the only person in the room. "You're trembling," he said quietly. "I'm fine." "You're terrified." His hand tightened on hers, reassuring. "We can stop if you want. Say the word, and I'll release you." But Eliza didn't want to be released. For the first time in 3 years, she felt alive, visible, real. "Keep dancing," she said. So they did. They danced 3 sets together. Scandalous by society standards, but this was a house party, not a formal ball. The rules were looser, but not loose enough to ignore entirely. After the 3rd dance, Adrian appeared at Julian's shoulder. "My turn," he said. It wasn't a request. Julian's expression darkened. "Eliza doesn't have to—" "I know what Miss Harrow has to do." Adrian's voice was ice. "I'm asking if she'd do me the honor of a dance." Eliza should have refused, should have excused herself, claimed fatigue, ended this before it escalated further. But the challenge in Adrian's eyes, the assumption that she'd defer to his rank, his authority, it sparked something reckless in her. "One dance," she said. Julian released her reluctantly. Adrian took his place. His hand on her waist was different from Julian's, colder, more controlled. He held her at a proper distance, his posture perfect, his expression neutral. They began to dance. "You're good at this," she said, more to break the silence than anything. "I was trained from childhood. Dancing is a necessary skill for someone in my position." "How practical?" "Practicality keeps estates running. Romance and grand gestures don't pay debts or feed tenants." Was that a dig at Julian? At her? "I'm aware of what keeps estates running, Your Grace. I've been keeping yours running for 3 years. His eyes snapped to hers. For a moment, something almost like surprise crossed his face. "You have," he acknowledged, "and I've been remiss in not expressing my gratitude before now." "Your gratitude came awfully fast once your brother paid me attention." The words were out before Eliza could stop them. Reckless, dangerous. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Is that what you think? That I'm only noticing you now to spite Julian?" "Aren't you?" "I'm noticing you now because I was forced to look." His voice was low, meant only for her ears. Julian was right about one thing. "I've been blind, but being blind and being calculating are not the same thing." "Aren't they? You calculate everything else." "Not this." His hand tightened slightly on her waist. "I don't know what this is." The admission felt dangerous. Honest in a way Adrian never was. "This is you seeing a problem," Eliza said. "Your brother is interested in your household companion. It disrupts the social order, threatens the estate's reputation, complicates your carefully controlled world. So you're solving it the only way you know how, by asserting your own claim." "Is that truly what you believe?" "What else should I believe? You've ignored me for 3 years, Your Grace. 3 years of existing in the same house, managing your household, ensuring your comfort. And you never saw me. Not once. But the moment Julian does, suddenly I'm visible to you?" She was speaking too freely, she knew, crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But the anger that had been building for days, for years, was flooding out, unstoppable. "So forgive me if I don't trust this sudden attention. Forgive me if I think it's strategy rather than sincerity." The music ended. They stood there in the middle of the floor, still facing each other, while the other dancers dispersed around them. "You're wrong," Adrian said quietly. "Am I?" "You're wrong about my motives, but you're right about my blindness." He released her, stepping back. "And you're right to distrust me. I've given you no reason to do otherwise." He bowed, formally, precisely, and walked away. Eliza stood alone in the middle of the floor, her heart pounding, aware of the curious stares from the other guests. Julian appeared at her side. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing. Everything. I need air." She fled to the terrace before anyone could stop her. The night was cold, frost glittering on the stone balustrade. Eliza's breath came out in clouds. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop shaking. What had she done? She'd challenged a duke, thrown his neglect in his face, Accused him of manipulation and calculation. She could be dismissed, cast out. 3 years of careful survival destroyed in one reckless conversation. Eliza. She turned. Julian stood in the doorway, concern written across his face. Are you all right? I'm fine. You're not. He crossed to her, pulling off his coat and draping it around her shoulders. What did Adrian say? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Julian's hands rested on her shoulders, warm through the fabric. Eliza, I care about you. More than I probably should, more than is wise, but I need you to know it's real. What I feel for you, it's not novelty or boredom or anything else you're telling yourself. It's real. Eliza looked up at him. In the moonlight, his handsome face was earnest, open, everything Adrian wasn't. I care about you too, she admitted. But Julian, this is impossible. You know it is. Why? Because of money? Because of rank? Those are just constructs, Eliza. Artificial barriers society created to keep people in their assigned boxes. Those artificial barriers are the only thing keeping me alive. Her voice cracked. I have nothing, Julian. No money, no family, no prospects. This position with Charlotte is all I have, and if I jeopardize it, if I forget my place, I lose everything. You wouldn't lose everything. You'd have me. The promise was beautiful. Impossible. For how long? Eliza asked gently. Until your family objects? Until society makes it too uncomfortable? Until you realize that loving me costs too much? That won't happen. It already is happening. Your brother is furious. The guests are whispering. Charlotte is worried. This isn't sustainable, Julian, and I can't afford to gamble my survival on hope. Julian's hands tightened on her shoulders. So what are you saying? That we just give up? Pretend this doesn't exist? I'm saying I can't afford to want things I can't have. I learned that lesson 3 years ago when my life fell apart. This is different. Is it? Eliza stepped back, his coat sliding from her shoulders. Or am I just making the same mistake again, believing that wanting something badly enough can make it possible? Eliza, I should go inside. It's late. Don't run from this, from us. There is no us, Julian. The words hurt to say. There's you. A duke's brother with prospects and freedom and choice. And there's me, a penniless companion with nothing but the charity of others keeping me fed and housed. Those realities don't change just because we wish they would. She moved toward the door. Julian caught her hand. I'm not giving up on you. Then you're a fool. Inside, the party was winding down. Guests were drifting toward their rooms. Eliza made her excuses to Charlotte, who looked at her with worried, knowing eyes, and escaped to her small room in the family wing. She didn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire disastrous evening. The dance with Adrian, the conversation with Julian, the impossible position she'd somehow stumbled into. 3 years of invisibility shattered in less than a week, and she had no idea how to survive what came next. Morning brought clarity of a sort. Eliza woke early, dressed quickly, and went to find Charlotte before the rest of the house stirred. Charlotte was in her sitting room, already awake despite the early hour. She took one look at Eliza's face and gestured to the chair. Tell me. So Eliza did. All of it. The attention from both brothers, the growing tension, the confrontation at dinner, the dance with Adrian, the conversation with Julian on the terrace. Charlotte listened without interrupting. I've made a mess of everything, Eliza finished. I should have stayed invisible. Should have discouraged Julian from the start. Avoided Adrian entirely. But I let myself feel seen, and now you're terrified you'll lose everything, Charlotte finished softly. I understand. But Eliza, you haven't done anything wrong. You didn't ask for this. You didn't seek attention from either of them. But I accepted it. I encouraged it by not refusing it immediately. You accepted basic human kindness and conversation. That's not a crime. Charlotte leaned forward. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Not with me, with yourself. What do you want? I want to be safe. That's not what I asked. I asked what you want. Not what's practical or possible or safe. What do you actually want? Eliza's throat tightened. It doesn't matter what I want. It matters more than anything else, Charlotte's voice was fierce. You've spent 3 years surviving, Eliza. 3 years making yourself small and useful and invisible because you thought that was the only way to endure. But survival isn't living, and you deserve to live. I can't afford to live. I can only afford to survive. What if that's not true anymore? What if you have choices now that you didn't have before? What choices? Eliza's laugh was bitter. Accept Julian's attention and watch it destroy both of us when reality sets in? Or accept Adrian's calculated interest and spend my life wondering if I'm a person to him or just another problem solved? Or refuse them both and choose yourself? Charlotte said quietly. Eliza stared at her. What? You don't have to choose either of them, darling. You can choose independence. Choose to leave this impossible situation and build something of your own. With what? I have no money, no prospects. You have skills, intelligence, education. You've been running this estate for 3 years. Do you think other households wouldn't value that experience? Charlotte's expression was serious. I've been selfish keeping you here, letting you make yourself indispensable to me because it made my life easier. But you could be a governess, Eliza, a genuine one, with wages and independence. Or a lady's companion in London, where your education and competence would be valued and compensated. The idea was dizzying, terrifying. You want me to leave? I want you to have choices, real choices, not just survival or compromise. Charlotte reached across and took Eliza's hand. I'll write you references, glowing ones, and I'll help you find a position worthy of your abilities. But only if that's what you want. What did she want? The question sat in Eliza's chest like a stone. For 3 years, she'd been so focused on surviving that she'd forgotten to consider if there might be more. Forgotten that she could want things beyond safety and shelter. But wanting things was dangerous. It led to disappointment, to pain. I need to think, Eliza said finally. Take all the time you need. Charlotte squeezed her hand. Just remember, you're not as powerless as you think. You never were. Eliza spent the rest of the day in a fog. She performed her duties mechanically, avoided both brothers, and tried to silence the war raging in her head. But that evening, everything came to a head. The house party was ending. Most of the guests would leave in the morning. Adrian had planned a small farewell dinner, intimate, just family and a few close friends. Eliza wasn't planning to attend, but Adrian sent Mrs. Pemberton to her room with a direct message. Her presence was requested. Not requested. Required. Eliza dressed carefully in her best gown, dark blue, simple, appropriate for her station. She went downstairs with her stomach in knots. The dinner was indeed small, just 10 people around the table. Charlotte and her husband, Lord and Lady Haverford, a few others, and both brothers. Adrian was at the head of the table. Julian was seated halfway down, and the empty chair, clearly meant for Eliza, was directly to Adrian's right, the place of honor. The message was unmistakable. Every eye in the room turned to her as she entered. Julian's expression went dark. Charlotte looked worried. Adrian stood. Miss Harrow, he said formally. Thank you for joining us. Please. He gestured to the chair beside him. Eliza wanted to refuse, wanted to turn and walk out, consequences be damned. But everyone was watching. And refusing a direct invitation from the Duke in front of guests would be an unforgivable breach of propriety. She sat. Adrian resumed his seat, perfectly composed, as if seating a companion in the position usually reserved for honored guests was completely normal. I trust you had a pleasant day, he said to her. It was so absurd, this formal small talk after everything, that Eliza nearly laughed. Quite pleasant, Your Grace. And yours? Productive. He turned to address the table at large. I've been reviewing the household accounts. Miss Harrow's management has been exemplary. The estate has run with remarkable efficiency under her oversight. Public acknowledgement, public praise. It should have pleased her. Instead, it felt like a chess move. Adrian establishing his claim in front of witnesses. Across the table, Julian's knuckles were white on his wine glass. Dinner proceeded with excruciating slowness, course after course, while Adrian made polite conversation and Julian simmered in barely controlled fury. And Eliza sat there, a pawn in a game she'd never agreed to play. Finally, mercifully, the dinner ended. The guests began to drift away. Julian stood abruptly. Adrian, a word. Not now. Now. Julian's voice carried an edge that made the remaining guests look up. Adrian's expression remained controlled, but Eliza saw the flash of irritation in his eyes. Very well, my study, 5 minutes. He stood, nodded to the remaining guests, and left. Julian followed. Eliza sat frozen in her chair. Charlotte appeared at her elbow. Come, you don't need to be here for whatever's about to happen. But Eliza couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because she knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened in that study would change everything, and she had no control over it. The study door slammed hard enough that Eliza heard it from the dining room. Charlotte's hand tightened on her arm. Eliza, please, come away from this. But Eliza couldn't move. The voices rising behind that heavy oak door weren't quite audible, but the fury in them was unmistakable. She sat there, frozen, while the remaining guests exchanged uncomfortable glances and made hasty excuses to retire. Within minutes, the dining room had emptied except for Charlotte and Eliza. This is my fault, Eliza whispered. I should never have... Don't! Charlotte's voice was sharp. Don't you dare take responsibility for their pride. This fight has been brewing between them for years. You're just the catalyst, not the cause. What do you mean? Charlotte sighed, looking suddenly exhausted. Adrian and Julian have been circling each other like wolves since their father died. Adrian inherited everything, the title, the estate, the responsibility. Julian got an allowance and the freedom to do whatever he pleased. Adrian resents that freedom. Julian resents that inheritance, and neither of them knows how to talk to the other without it turning into a battle for dominance. Over me, over everything, you just happen to be the battlefield they chose this time. The words should have made Eliza angry, should have galvanized her into action, into refusing to be anyone's battleground. Instead, they made her feel small, powerless. A crash from the study, something heavy hitting the floor. Charlotte stood. I'm getting my husband. This has gone far enough. She left Eliza alone in the dining room. The voices were clearer now, not words exactly, but tone. Julian's voice raised an accusation. Adrian's colder, more controlled, but with an undercurrent of rage that Eliza had never heard from him before. She shouldn't listen, shouldn't stay here. But her feet wouldn't move. The study door flew open. Julian stormed out, his face flushed with fury. He stopped when he saw Eliza sitting there. You, he said, not angry at her, angry for her. You deserve so much better than this, than him, than all of it. Before Eliza could respond, Adrian appeared in the doorway. His composure was cracked. His cravat was askew, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. The cold, controlled Duke was gone, replaced by something rawer. Julian, we're not finished. Yes, we are. Julian's voice was tight. I'm done playing your games, Adrian. I'm done pretending you give a damn about anyone but yourself. Is that what you think this is? A game? What else would you call it? You ignored her for 3 years. 3 years, Adrian. She ran your household, made your life easier, existed in the same house, and you never once looked at her. But the moment I did, the moment I showed her basic human decency, suddenly she's worth your attention? Adrian's jaw clenched. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain how this is anything other than you asserting control because you can't stand that I found something, someone, you overlooked. I don't owe you explanations. No, but you owe her one. Julian gestured toward Eliza. You owe her honesty at the very least. Tell her the truth, Adrian. Tell her why you're really doing this. You told her nothing. You gave her some speech about being blind, about being grateful for her service. But you didn't tell her the actual truth, did you? Eliza found her voice. What truth? Both brothers turned to her. Julian's expression was fierce, protective. Adrian's was shuttered, defensive. Tell her, Julian demanded, or I will. This is not the time. There's never going to be a right time with you. Julian laughed, bitter and sharp. You're going to wait until it's too late, until she's already gone, and then you'll regret it for the rest of your miserable, lonely life. Enough! Adrian's voice cracked like a whip, but Julian wasn't done. He turned to Eliza, his blue eyes blazing. Do you know why Adrian never saw you? It wasn't because you were beneath his notice. It was because looking at you scared him. Julian, Adrian's warning tone was dangerous. Our father raised Adrian to be a duke and nothing else. Duty before everything. Emotion is weakness. Attachment is liability. So Adrian learned to not see people, to see functions, roles, positions, because seeing people means feeling things, and feeling things means vulnerability. Stop talking. But you're smart, capable, beautiful, everything he'd be drawn to if he let himself be human for 5 minutes. So he didn't look. He couldn't afford to look because if he did, he might want something besides duty and control. Adrian moved so fast that Eliza barely saw it. He grabbed Julian by the collar, hauling him close. For a moment, she thought he might actually strike his brother. "You know nothing about what I can or cannot afford," Adrian hissed. "You've spent 4 years running away from every responsibility while I held this estate together. While I managed the tenants and the debts and the endless crushing weight of keeping everything from falling apart. So don't you dare lecture me about what I feel or don't feel." Julian shoved him back. "Then feel something. For once in your life, stop calculating and just feel." "I am feeling!" Adrian's shout echoed through the room. "I'm feeling furious that you waltz back here after 4 years of freedom and decide to play at romance with the one person in this house who actually matters. The one person who's been here, working, sacrificing, making everything run while you were off touring galleries and drinking wine in Paris." The words hung in the air like smoke. Eliza stood slowly. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady. "I'm right here. I can hear you, both of you." Both brothers turned to her, as if they'd forgotten she could speak. "You're talking about me like I'm a prize to be won or a problem to be solved, like I don't have thoughts or feelings or choices of my own." Her voice was getting louder, stronger. "But I do. I have all of those things, and right now, what I'm feeling is done." "Eliza," Julian started. "No, you don't get to talk right now." She looked between them, Julian with his earnest concern, Adrian with his fractured control. "Both of you, you're so busy fighting each other that neither of you has actually asked me what I want." "What do you want?" Adrian's voice was rough. "I want to not be this." Eliza gestured between them, her hands trembling with rage and hurt. "I want to not be the thing you use to hurt each other. I want to not be invisible until it's convenient, or valued only when there's competition. I want to matter because of who I am, not because of what I represent in your endless war." "You do matter," Julian said. "Do I? Or do I matter because wanting me proves something to your brother?" She turned to Adrian. "And you? Do I matter to you at all? Or am I just another asset to control, another variable to manage?" Adrian's face was white. "You think that little of me? I don't know what to think of you. I don't know you, despite living in your house for 3 years, despite managing every aspect of your daily comfort. I don't actually know you at all." Her voice cracked. "And the worst part is you don't know me either. You've never bothered to." "That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me something about me, Adrian. Anything. Not about my work or my efficiency or my usefulness. Something real." The silence stretched. Adrian stared at her and she could see him scrambling, searching for something to say. But there was nothing. 3 years, and he knew nothing about her beyond her function. "That's what I thought," Eliza said quietly. She turned to leave. "Your favorite color is green." Adrian's voice stopped her. "Not bright green. The color of new leaves in spring. You read in the library on Tuesday afternoons when you think no one will notice. You take your tea with honey, not sugar, and you hate roses despite cutting them every week for Charlotte. You're left-handed, but you taught yourself to write with your right hand because your tutors insisted. You're terrified of thunder, but you stand at the window during storms anyway. And you hum when you think you're alone. Old ballads, usually. Songs your mother taught you before she died." Eliza turned slowly. Adrian was looking at her now, really looking, with an intensity that stole her breath. "You think I didn't see you," he said. "But I saw everything. I saw you that first day you arrived, exhausted from the journey and trying so hard to seem grateful and small. I saw you learning the house, memorizing every detail, working until your hands shook from fatigue. I saw you reading to Charlotte when she was too ill to hold a book herself. I saw you managing the servants with more grace than most nobility. I saw all of it. Then why? Because I'm a coward." The admission seemed to cost him. Julian's right. I was raised to be a title, not a person. And you were everything I couldn't afford to want. You were smart and strong and human in a way that terrified me. Because wanting you meant feeling something I couldn't control, something I couldn't manage with logic and strategy. Eliza's chest felt tight. So you ignored me. I tried to. I failed spectacularly, but I tried. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Do you know how many times I found excuses to walk past the library on Tuesday afternoons? How many times I ordered roses for Charlotte just to watch you arrange them, even though I knew you hated them? I learned your routines, your habits, your preferences. I knew everything about you except how to actually talk to you. That's the most pathetic thing I've ever heard, Julian said. Adrian ignored him. I know I have no right to your time or your attention. I know I've forfeited any claim through my own blindness and cowardice. But Julian's wrong about one thing. This isn't about beating him. This is about the fact that I've been half in love with you for 2 years and too much of a fool to admit it, even to myself. The room went absolutely silent. Eliza couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You don't mean that, she finally managed. I do. Adrian's voice was steady now, certain. I've been fighting it for so long that I forgot I was fighting. I told myself it was inappropriate, impossible, beneath my station to care about a companion. But the truth is, I was just scared. Scared of wanting something I might not be able to have. Scared of being vulnerable. Scared of becoming my father, who loved my mother so much that when she died, he turned to ice and never thawed. He took a step toward her. I'm still scared, he admitted. Terrified, actually. But I'm more terrified of losing you without ever having the courage to tell you the truth. So here it is. I see you, Eliza. I've always seen you. And if you give me a chance, if you can forgive 3 years of cowardice, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know you're seen. Eliza's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break her ribs. This was everything she'd wanted. Recognition, value. Someone seeing her not as a function, but as a person. But it was also coming from a man who'd had 3 years to say these words, and had only found them when his brother forced his hand. I don't believe you, she said. Adrian flinched like she'd struck him. I want to. I want to believe that this is real, that it's not just pride or competition or a response to Julian's attention. But I can't. Her voice was shaking. Because if you'd really felt this way for 2 years, you would have said something, done something, but you didn't. You stayed silent and distant until the threat of losing to your brother made you speak. That's not, isn't it? She looked at Julian. And you? You say you value me, but you've known me for less than 2 weeks. What you feel isn't love. It's infatuation, novelty, the excitement of someone new after years of the same social circles. Julian's expression hardened. You don't know what I feel. No, I don't. And neither do you, really. How could you? We've barely had time to know each other beyond surface conversation. So we take more time while everyone watches and whispers, while society tears me apart for reaching above my station, while your family pressures you to choose someone appropriate? Eliza shook her head. I've seen this story, Julian. I've lived it. My father believed love conquered all, that social barriers didn't matter if feelings were genuine. He married my mother despite his family's objections. And you know what happened? They cut him off. He spent his whole life struggling, working himself to death trying to provide for a family he loved but couldn't support. And when he died, he left us with nothing but debts and broken dreams. I'm not your father. No, you're worse. Because you have money and freedom and choices, and you're willing to gamble those things on a woman you barely know. But when reality sets in, when your family objects, when society makes it clear I'm unacceptable, you'll resent me. Maybe not immediately, maybe not for years. But eventually, you'll look at everything you gave up for me and wonder if I was worth it. That won't happen. It always happens. Eliza's voice cracked. Love isn't enough. It's never been enough. I learned that watching my parents, watching my mother work herself sick trying to make ends meet while society shunned her for marrying below her station. I watched love destroy them, and I won't let it destroy me. Julian looked gutted. Adrian looked. She couldn't read his expression at all. So what are you saying? Julian asked quietly. I'm saying that I deserve better than being fought over like territory. I deserve better than attention that only came because someone else noticed me first. I deserve better than being someone's rebellion or someone's belated revelation. She turned to Adrian. You say you've loved me for 2 years? Then you should have told me 2 years ago. Should have taken the risk, faced the fear, chosen me when it was hard. But you didn't, and I can't build a life on someone's regret. Then to Julian, and you say you value me? Then value me enough to let me go. Let me make my own choices without the weight of your expectations or your rivalry with your brother. What choice are you making? Julian's voice was barely above a whisper. Eliza straightened her shoulders. The decision crystallized in her chest, sharp and clear and terrifying. I'm leaving. What? Both brothers spoke at once. I'm leaving Blackthorn Hall. Charlotte's been helping me find a position in London. A governess post with a good family. Real wages. Real independence. The words felt powerful in her mouth, dangerous. I'm choosing myself. My own life. Not survival, not compromise, but actually building something that's mine. Eliza, wait. Adrian stepped forward. No, I'm done waiting. I've waited 3 years for you to see me. I'm not waiting anymore. When? Julian's voice was hollow. The position starts in 3 weeks. I'll stay until Charlotte's found a replacement, but then I'm gone. You can't just... I can. Eliza felt something like power flooding through her veins. I can choose to leave. I can choose to build a life where I'm valued from the start, not as an afterthought or a consolation prize. I can choose myself. She looked between them one last time. These two men who'd turned her world upside down in the space of 2 weeks. I hope you both find what you're looking for, she said quietly, but it won't be me. She walked out of the dining room with her head high and her heart breaking. Behind her, she heard Julian say something low and furious to Adrian, heard Adrian's response, equally angry. But she didn't stop, didn't look back. She climbed the stairs to her small room, closed the door, and finally let herself fall apart. The next morning, Eliza woke before dawn. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her head ached, and her chest felt hollow. But she also felt something else. Free. The decision had been made. No more agonizing over impossible choices. No more being pulled between two brothers like a rope in a tug of war. She was leaving, building something new. It was terrifying. It was also the first real choice she'd made in 3 years. She dressed quickly and went to find Charlotte, who was already awake in her sitting room despite the early hour. I heard, Charlotte said before Eliza could speak. The whole house heard, I suspect. My husband said you could probably hear the shouting from the stables. Eliza sank into a chair. I'm sorry. I never meant to cause such disruption. Stop apologizing for other people's poor behavior, Charlotte set aside her embroidery. Are you sure about this? About leaving? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Charlotte's smile was sad. I'll miss you terribly, but I'm also proud of you. Choosing yourself, that takes courage most women never find. Or stupidity. There's a fine line. Charlotte reached over and squeezed Eliza's hand. The governess position is confirmed. The family is good. No young children, just a teenage daughter who needs instruction in literature and languages. Perfect for you. The wages are fair and they'll provide room and board. Thank you. Eliza's throat felt tight. For everything. For taking me in. For giving me a place when I had nothing. You gave me far more than I ever gave you. You've been my dearest friend through the worst period of my life. I only wish I'd been strong enough to help you sooner. They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun rose. The house party guests departed throughout the day. Carriages loaded with luggage, tearful goodbyes, promises to write. Eliza helped coordinate it all with her usual efficiency, though she could feel eyes on her constantly. The servants were whispering. They knew something had happened, even if they didn't know specifics. Julian sought her out in the afternoon. He found her in the library, creating an inventory of books that would need replacing. Can we talk? He asked. Eliza set down her quill. Of course. He closed the door behind him, then seemed uncertain what to do. Finally, he sat across from her, his usual easy confidence notably absent. I want to apologize, he said, for putting you in that position, for making assumptions about what you wanted without actually asking, for treating you like a prize to be won instead of a person with her own agency and desires. Eliza hadn't expected that. Thank you. I meant what I said, though, about caring for you, about valuing you. Julian's blue eyes were earnest. I know you think it's infatuation or novelty, and maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know you well enough to be certain of what I feel, but I'd like the chance to find out, properly, without the competition or the pressure or my brother looming over everything. Julian, I'm not asking you to stay. I heard you last night, really heard you. You deserve independence and choice and a life that's yours. He leaned forward, but I'm asking if I can write to you, court you properly, the way you deserve. Give us a chance to see if this could be something real, something lasting. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility. It was a good speech, sincere even. But Eliza had already made her choice. I can't, she said gently, not because I don't care about you. I do. But because I need to build my own life first. I need to know who I am outside of survival, outside of being valued in relation to someone else. Does that make sense? It does. Julian's smile was sad. But the offer stands. If you ever change your mind, I'll be here. He left quietly. Eliza returned to her inventory, but the numbers blurred on the page. She didn't see Adrian for the next 2 days. He made himself scarce, riding out early, returning late, taking meals in his study, avoiding her as deliberately as he'd once ignored her. The irony wasn't lost on Eliza, but on the 3rd day he found her in the conservatory. She was selecting flowers for Charlotte's room when his voice made her jump. Green. He was standing in the doorway. Your favorite color. I was right about that, wasn't I? Eliza turned slowly. Adrian looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his usual immaculate appearance slightly rumpled. You were right about most of it, she admitted, but not about what matters. He stepped into the conservatory, closing the door behind him. Eliza, I need you to understand something. What I said the other night about being in love with you, it wasn't strategy or competition or a response to Julian's attention. Then what was it? The truth. Finally. Adrian moved closer. I've been lying to myself for so long that I forgot what honesty felt like. But seeing you with Julian, seeing you laugh with him, talk with him, be seen by him, it shattered every lie I'd told myself about duty and propriety and staying in control. So you were jealous, furiously jealous, but not because I wanted to beat Julian, because I realized I was watching someone else give you everything I was too much of a coward to offer. His voice was raw. You were right to call me out, right to refuse me. I had 3 years to speak and I wasted them. Eliza set down the shears. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know it's real, not convenient, not calculated, real. Adrian was standing close enough now that she could see the desperation in his gray eyes. I'm not asking you to stay. I heard what you said about choosing yourself, and I respect that. But I'm asking you to know the truth before you go. Which truth? That I love you, have loved you, will continue loving you even after you leave. He said it like a vow. That's not going to change whether you're here or in London or on the other side of the world. It's not conditional on your proximity or your acceptance. It just is. Eliza's heart ached. Adrian, let me finish, please. He took a shaky breath. I know I forfeited my chance. I know I can't undo 3 years of cowardice with one confession. But if there's ever a time, months from now, years from now, when you've built your own life and you're ready to let someone into it, I want you to know I'll be here, waiting, hoping, working every day to become someone worthy of that chance. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. It was also too late. I appreciate you telling me, Eliza said quietly, and I believe you. I do. But Adrian, the timing is terrible. I know. He laughed, bitter and broken. Story of my life, always calculating the perfect moment, and by the time I'm ready, the moment's already passed. Maybe not passed, just postponed. Adrian's eyes searched hers. Is that hope I'm hearing? It's honesty. Eliza chose her words carefully. I need to leave. I need to build something of my own, prove to myself that I can survive, that I can thrive, without depending on someone else's charity or attention or love. I need to know who I am outside of this house, outside of being useful, outside of all of it. I understand. But, she swallowed hard, but once I do that, once I've built my own foundation, I'd like to know who you are too, the real you, not the Duke, not the title, not the control, just Adrian. Something flickered in his expression. You'd give me that chance? I'm not promising anything. Not a courtship, not a future, just the possibility of one. If you're willing to wait while I figure out who I am, then maybe, when I'm ready, we can figure out who we are together. It was a slim thread of hope, fragile, tentative, but it was honest. Adrian nodded slowly. Then I'll wait, however long it takes. It might be years. I've already wasted 3. What's a few more if they mean getting it right this time? Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. You're not the man I thought you were. Better or worse? More human. She smiled through the tears. More flawed. More real. Adrian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. His fingers were warm, calloused from writing. Build your life, Eliza, he said quietly. Become whoever you're meant to be. And when you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be here. No pressure. No expectations. Just possibility. It was the same word Julian had used, but from Adrian, weighted with patience and hard-won humility, it felt different. It felt real. 3 weeks later, Eliza stood in the entrance hall of Blackthorn Hall with her single trunk of belongings. Charlotte was crying, though trying to hide it. Julian had left 2 days prior. Returning to London, he'd said, though Eliza suspected he couldn't bear to watch her go, and Adrian stood by the door, composed and distant once more. The Duke, not the man. The carriage is ready, he said formally. Eliza nodded. She embraced Charlotte one last time, whispering promises to write, to visit, to stay connected. Then she turned to Adrian. For a moment, they just looked at each other. 3 years of invisibility, 2 weeks of chaos, and now a fragile thread of possibility stretching into an uncertain future. Thank you, she said, for everything. The gratitude is mine. Adrian's voice was steady, but his eyes held everything he wasn't saying. Godspeed, Miss Harrow. He handed her into the carriage himself. His fingers lingered on hers for just a moment. A promise, a question, a goodbye. Eliza settled into her seat as the carriage began to move. She looked back once. Adrian was still standing in the doorway, watching her leave. Not moving, not waving, just watching. And for the first time in 3 years, Eliza felt truly seen. The carriage turned onto the main road, and Blackthorn Hall disappeared behind the trees. Eliza faced forward, toward London, toward her new position, toward a future she was building with her own hands. She was terrified. She was free. And for now, that was enough. London smelled different than the countryside. Coal smoke and river water, and too many people crammed into too little space. The carriage rattled through streets that grew narrower and dirtier the farther they traveled from the fashionable districts, until finally stopping before a respectable but unremarkable townhouse in Bloomsbury. Eliza's new life. Mrs. Catherine Thornfield answered the door herself, a tall, angular woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue, as Eliza would soon discover. "You're prompt," Mrs. Thornfield said, looking Eliza up and down with the assessing gaze of someone who'd been disappointed before. "That's good. My daughter despises tardiness. Come in. Your room is on the 3rd floor. Meals are at 8, 1, and 6 precisely. We don't keep country hours here. No welcome. No pleasantries. Just efficiency." Eliza found it oddly comforting. The room was small, barely large enough for a narrow bed, a writing desk, and a wardrobe. But it was hers, the first space that had truly belonged to her in 3 years. She set down her trunk and sat on the bed, testing the mattress. Lumpy. The window overlooked a brick wall. The wallpaper was faded. It was perfect. That first week passed in a blur of adjustment. The Thornfield household ran on rigid schedules and high expectations. Mrs. Thornfield was a widow whose late husband had made his fortune in shipping, new money trying desperately to crack the old aristocracy through his daughter. That daughter was Cecilia. 17, intelligent, and absolutely determined to make Eliza's life difficult. "I don't need a governess," Cecilia announced during their first lesson. She was pretty in a delicate way, with her mother's sharp eyes and none of her discipline. "I'm practically grown. This is humiliating." "Then let's not call it governess and student," Eliza said calmly. "Let's call it 2 women studying together." Cecilia blinked, thrown off her script. "What? You're right. You're too old for a governess. But your mother hired me to help you with French literature and composition, So either we do this as equals or we waste 6 months being miserable. Your choice. It was a gamble, the kind of directness that could get her dismissed on the first day. Cecilia stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, she smiled. You're not like the others. The others? The previous governesses. There were 3 before you. They all treated me like a child, spoke down to me. I made sure they didn't last long. I see. Eliza pulled out a book. Well, I'm not here to condescend to you. I'm here because I need employment and you need instruction. Seems like a fair trade to me. Now, shall we start with Molière or would you prefer Racine? Cecilia's smile widened. I like you. This might actually be tolerable. It was more than tolerable. Within a week, Cecilia stopped testing her. Within 2, they were having actual discussions about literature and philosophy that reminded Eliza of her conversations with Julian, back when everything had been simple and new. She tried not to think about Julian, or Adrian, or Blackthorn Hall. Mostly she succeeded. The wages came at the end of the first month. Real money. Money she'd earned through her own labor, not accepted as charity or dependency. Eliza held the coins in her hand and cried. Mrs. Thornfield found her like that, sitting at her small desk with tears streaming down her face and a modest pile of wages in front of her. Are you unwell? Mrs. Thornfield's tone was concerned but brisk. No. Eliza wiped her eyes quickly. I'm sorry. I'm fine. Just... First wages you've earned yourself? Eliza nodded, not trusting her voice. Mrs. Thornfield's expression softened slightly. I remember mine. I was a lady's maid before I married Mr. Thornfield. The first money I earned, properly earned, I spent it all on books. Stupid, probably, but I'd never had the luxury of choosing before. What did you buy? Poetry, novels, things my employers would have thought frivolous. Mrs. Thornfield moved toward the door, then paused. You're good with Cecilia. Better than the others. She actually looks forward to your lessons now. That's worth more than wages, Miss Harrow. Remember that. After she left, Eliza carefully divided her earnings. Most would go to savings, building that foundation she'd promised herself. But she allowed herself one small luxury. She bought flowers for her room, green ones. Letters started arriving from Blackthorn Hall within the first month. Charlotte wrote weekly, long, newsy letters full of estate gossip and concern for Eliza's well-being. Eliza treasured them, reading each one multiple times before composing careful responses. Julian wrote too. His letters were charming, warm, full of observations about London society and theater reviews and questions about her new life. He never pushed, never asked for more than she'd given him, just maintained that thread of connection, that possibility. Eliza answered them, but kept her responses friendly and distant. She wasn't ready. Might never be ready. Adrian's letters were different. They came less frequently, once every 2 weeks, like clockwork. And they weren't love letters or pleas or attempts at persuasion. They were just letters, updates about the estate, questions about her opinions on household management issues he was facing, requests for advice on staff problems. It took Eliza 3 letters to realize what he was doing. He was showing her his world. The daily reality of being a duke, not the cold authority she'd witnessed, but the constant decisions, the weight of responsibility, the isolation of making choices that affected hundreds of people with no one to consult. He was letting her see him, the real him. And slowly, carefully, she started responding with more than polite acknowledgments. She asked questions, offered suggestions, shared her own experiences in the Thornfield household. They built something through those letters. Not romance, nothing so simple, but understanding, recognition, the foundation of what might someday become trust. 3 months into her position, Mrs. Thornfield called Eliza into her sitting room. We're attending Lady Ashmore's ball next week, she announced. Cecilia is officially out this season, and we need to establish her in society. You'll accompany us. Eliza blinked. I'm sorry, what? Cecilia refuses to go without you, says you're the only person who doesn't bore her to tears. Mrs. Thornfield's expression was wry. And frankly, I agree. You have education and polish that most governesses lack. People will assume you're a poor relation, which is close enough to the truth to avoid scandal. I don't have anything appropriate to wear to. I've had a dress made. Consider it part of your wages. Mrs. Thornfield held up a hand before Eliza could protest. Don't argue. Cecilia's happiness is my priority, and she's happy with you. That's worth a dress. The ball was at a massive house in Mayfair that made even Blackthorn Hall look modest. Eliza felt absurdly out of place in her borrowed finery, standing at the edge of the ballroom while Cecilia danced with a succession of eager young men. You look uncomfortable. Eliza turned. Julian stood beside her, resplendent in formal evening wear, his golden hair catching the candlelight. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. What are you doing here? She asked. I could ask you the same thing. His smile was cautious. Though I'm delighted to see you, you look beautiful. I look like I'm playing dress-up. You look like yourself. Which is beautiful. Julian's eyes searched her face. How are you? Really? I'm well. Working? Building? She managed a smile. How are you? Miserable without you, but managing. He said it lightly, but there was truth underneath. I've been trying to respect your boundaries, give you space. It's been torture. Julian, I know. He held up his hands. I'm not here to pressure you. I'm just happy to see you. May I have this dance? As friends? She should have refused. Should have maintained that distance. But she missed him. Missed his easy warmth, his genuine kindness. As friends, she agreed. He swept her onto the dance floor with the same effortless grace she remembered. For a few minutes, it was like being back at Blackthorn Hall. Except everything had changed. You seem different, Julian said as they turned. More confident, more yourself. I am myself, maybe for the first time in years. It suits you. He smiled, and there was something bittersweet in it. I was wrong, about us. Not about caring for you. That was real. But I was trying to save you, trying to be the hero who rescued the overlooked woman. That wasn't fair to you. Eliza looked up at him, surprised. What changed your mind? Time. Reflection. A very pointed conversation with Charlotte about how patronizing I was being. Julian laughed softly. She pointed out that you never needed rescuing. You just needed people to get out of your way and let you save yourself. Charlotte always was perceptive. She also thinks I'm an idiot for letting you go. Are you? Letting me go? Julian was quiet for a moment as they moved through the steps. I'm letting you choose. There's a difference. If you choose me someday, really choose me, not because I'm convenient or persistent, but because you actually want me, then I'll be the luckiest man alive. But if you don't, if you choose yourself or someone else, or neither of us, then I'll accept that too. That's remarkably mature of you. Don't sound so shocked. I'm capable of growth. His grin was self-deprecating. It just took losing you to figure it out. The music ended. Julian bowed, then brought her hand to his lips. I meant what I said in my letters, he murmured. I'm here if you need me. No expectations, no pressure, just possibility. He left her standing at the edge of the dance floor, her hand still tingling where he'd kissed it. Eliza's heart felt bruised. Seeing Julian had reminded her of everything she'd walked away from, the warmth, the attention, the intoxicating feeling of being wanted. But she'd also seen the truth in what he'd said. She hadn't needed rescuing. She'd needed space to become who she was meant to be. And she was becoming that person. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. The season progressed. Cecilia thrived under Eliza's instruction, blossoming from a sharp-tongued girl into an intelligent young woman who could hold her own in society. Mrs. Thornfield's gratitude manifested in small ways: better meals, a new dress, a raise in wages. Eliza was succeeding, but London society was small, and gossip traveled fast. 6 months into her position, Eliza attended another ball with the Thornfields. This one was even grander, hosted by the Duchess of Somerset, with half the aristocracy in attendance. Eliza was standing with Cecilia, reviewing potential dance partners, when she felt the weight of someone's gaze. She turned. Adrian stood across the ballroom. He looked the same, tall, dark, severe in his formal black, but something in his posture was different, less rigid, more uncertain. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Everything else fell away. Adrian crossed the ballroom with deliberate purpose. People moved aside for him. A duke commanded that respect automatically. He stopped in front of Eliza and bowed. Miss Harrow, he said formally, may I have this dance? Every eye in their immediate vicinity turned to watch. A duke asking a governess to dance was unusual enough to be scandalous. Eliza should have refused, should have protected her position, her reputation, but she'd spent 6 months building her own foundation. 6 months proving she could survive on her own. She was done being afraid. "You may, Your Grace," she said. Adrian's hand on her waist felt like coming home and stepping off a cliff simultaneously. They began to dance. "You're angry I'm here," he said quietly. "I'm surprised you're here. There's a difference. I had to see you." His gray eyes held hers. "Your letters. They've been my lifeline these past months. But letters aren't the same as seeing you, hearing your voice, knowing you're real." "I'm real." "I know." His hand tightened slightly. "You're also flourishing. Mrs. Thornfield has been singing your praises to anyone who'll listen. Her daughter is apparently transformed, all thanks to your influence." "You've been asking about me." Obsessively. The admission was blunt, honest. "I promised to wait while you built your own life. I didn't promise not to care how you were doing." Eliza felt something shift in her chest. "Why are you really here, Adrian?" "Because 6 months ago, I let you leave without fighting for you. I told myself I was respecting your choice, giving you space. But the truth is I was scared." He met her eyes. "I'm still scared. Terrified, actually. But I'm more terrified of waking up 20 years from now and realizing I let you slip away because I was too much of a coward to tell you the truth." "What truth?" "That I love you. Not the idea of you, not the memory of you, but you. The real you." His voice was low, intense. The woman who built her own life from nothing. The woman who chose herself over compromise. The woman who's too strong and too brilliant and too real for someone like me to deserve. "Adrian, I'm not asking you to choose me. Not yet. I'm just asking you to know that I see you, that I've been seeing you this whole time, and that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. Not as a duke, not as a title, just as a man who loves you more than he knows how to express." The music swirled around them. The ballroom glittered, and Eliza felt 6 months of careful distance crumbling. "I'm not ready," she whispered. "I know. I need more time. I'll give you all the time you need. But I want you to know—" She took a shaky breath. "I want you to know that I'm starting to see you too. The real you. Not the cold duke I thought I knew, but the man in your letters. The one who struggles with loneliness and duty and trying to do right by everyone while never being allowed to be human himself." Adrian's eyes widened. "Eliza, I don't know if what I feel is love. Not yet. But it's something, and it's real, and it's growing." She met his gaze steadily. "So keep writing to me. Keep showing me who you are. And maybe we'll find our way to each other. That's all I'm asking." The music ended. They stood there, still close, while the other dancers dispersed around them. Then Adrian did something that shocked her. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it, not formally, not as propriety demanded, but with genuine reverence. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me hope." He released her hand and walked away, leaving Eliza standing in the middle of the ballroom with her heart racing and her entire world tilted on its axis. Cecilia appeared at her elbow, eyes wide. "Was that the Duke of Blackthorn?" "Yes." "He just asked you to dance?" "Yes, in front of everyone." "I noticed." Cecilia's grin was wicked. "You're far more interesting than I gave you credit for, Miss Harrow." The whispers started immediately. By the next morning, half of London society was speculating about the Duke of Blackthorn's interest in the Thornfield governess. Some were scandalous, some were cruel, most were wildly inaccurate. Mrs. Thornfield called Eliza into her sitting room. "I need to know if this is going to become a problem," she said bluntly. "The Duke of Blackthorn is not insignificant. If he's courting you, he's not courting me. He danced with you at the Somerset ball. A duke doesn't dance with a governess unless he's interested." "He's interested," Eliza admitted. "But I'm not ready for a courtship, and I told him as much." Mrs. Thornfield studied her for a long moment. "And he accepted that?" "He did." "Remarkable." Mrs. Thornfield sat back. "Very well. But, Miss Harrow, you should know that your position here is secure regardless of what happens with the Duke. Cecilia adores you. You've done more for her in 6 months than anyone else managed in years. You have value here that has nothing to do with titled suitors. The word settled in Eliza's chest like a warm glow. Value. Not because of what she represented to someone else, but because of who she was and what she contributed. Thank you, Eliza said. Over the next few months, the routine continued. Lessons with Cecilia, letters from Charlotte and Julian and Adrian, small wages saved carefully, a life built one day at a time. But something had shifted at that ball. Adrian's letters became more personal. He wrote about his fears, his struggles, his slow attempts to become more human and less title. He told her about conversations with his tenants that actually involved listening, about mistakes he was trying to correct, about the loneliness of being responsible for everything while connected to nothing. And Eliza found herself responding with equal honesty. She wrote about her own fears, of dependency, of losing herself again, of wanting something so badly that she compromised who she'd become. She wrote about her work with Cecilia, about small triumphs and daily challenges. They were building something real through those letters, something that had nothing to do with ballrooms or rank or society's expectations, something genuine. 8 months after leaving Blackthorn Hall, Eliza received a letter that changed everything. It was from Adrian, but thicker than usual. When she opened it, a second letter fell out. The first was from Adrian. Eliza, Charlotte has fallen gravely ill. The physicians are concerned. She's been asking for you. I know I have no right to request anything of you, and I know this disrupts the life you've built. But if you could come, even for a few days, it would mean everything to her. And to me, Adrian. The second letter was from Charlotte herself, in shaky handwriting that betrayed her weakness. Dearest Eliza, I'm dying. The physicians won't say it plainly, but I know. I can feel it. Before I go, I need to see you one more time. Please come. I have something important to tell you. Your friend always, Charlotte. Eliza's hands were shaking so badly she could barely fold the letters. Charlotte, her dearest friend. The woman who'd given her refuge when she had nothing, who'd encouraged her to choose herself, who'd made this entire new life possible. She was dying. Mrs. Thornfield gave her leave immediately. Family comes first, she said, though they both knew Charlotte wasn't technically family. Go. Cecilia and I will manage. Eliza packed quickly and was on a carriage to Blackthorn Hall within hours. The journey felt endless. Every mile stretched like torture. She tried to read but couldn't focus, tried to sleep but couldn't settle. All she could think about was Charlotte's shaky handwriting, the weakness in those words. Please come. The carriage pulled up to Blackthorn Hall just as dusk was falling. The house looked the same, imposing, elegant, cold in the fading light. But Eliza was different. She walked up those steps not as a grateful dependent or invisible companion, but as a woman who'd built her own life and chosen to return. Adrian met her at the door. He looked terrible, exhausted, hollow-eyed, like he hadn't slept in days. You came, he said. Relief flooded his features. Of course I came. Eliza handed her cloak to a waiting servant. How is she? Weak. In pain, though she tries to hide it, but she's been waiting for you. He gestured toward the stairs. She's in her room. I'll take you. They climbed the stairs in silence. When they reached Charlotte's door, Adrian stopped. I should warn you, she's much worse than when you left. The illness has progressed quickly. Eliza steeled herself and entered. Charlotte lay in her bed, propped up by pillows. She'd always been pale, but now she looked almost translucent. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, making her seem younger and more fragile. But her eyes, those sharp, perceptive eyes, were still bright. Eliza, she breathed. You came. Eliza crossed to the bed and took Charlotte's hand. It felt like holding paper, thin and delicate. Of course I came. You asked. Charlotte smiled. My dear friend, look at you. You look so strong, so certain. London has been good to you. It has. But I missed you terribly. And I've missed you. But I'm so proud of you, Eliza. You chose yourself. You built something real. Charlotte's grip tightened slightly. That's what I wanted to tell you before I go. That you were right to leave, right to choose independence. Don't let anyone, not Adrian, not Julian, not anyone, make you regret that choice. Charlotte, let me finish. Please. Charlotte's breathing was labored. I don't have much time, and there's something else you need to know. Eliza leaned closer. Adrian loves you, Charlotte said. Really loves you. Not the way our father loved our mother. That cold, duty-bound affection. Real love, the kind that changes you. I've watched him these past 8 months, watched him struggle to become someone worthy of you. He's not there yet, might never fully get there, but he's trying. I know. Do you? Do you truly understand what it costs him? Charlotte's eyes were fierce despite her weakness. Adrian was raised to be ice, to value control above everything. Loving you is the first time he's chosen feeling over duty. It terrifies him, but he's doing it anyway. Why are you telling me this? Because when I'm gone, he's going to need you. Not as a companion or a convenience, but as an equal, as someone who sees him and loves him despite all his flaws. Charlotte smiled sadly. And because you need to know that it's okay to choose him. Choosing love doesn't mean giving up yourself, not if it's the right love. Eliza felt tears streaming down her face. You're not going to die. You're going to fight this, and I'm tired of fighting, darling. I've been fighting illness my whole life. I'm ready to rest. Charlotte raised a trembling hand to Eliza's cheek. But I'll rest easier knowing you're here. Knowing you and Adrian might find your way to each other. Promise me you'll at least try? I promise, Eliza whispered. Charlotte smiled. Good. Now go. Let me sleep. We'll talk more in the morning. But there was no morning. Charlotte died quietly in her sleep that night with her husband at her side. Eliza felt the loss like a physical blow. She'd known it was coming. The letter had warned her, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. Charlotte had been more than a friend. She'd been a lifeline when Eliza had nothing, a champion when she needed support, the person who'd helped her choose herself. And now she was gone. The funeral was held 3 days later. Half the county attended. Charlotte had been beloved despite her illness, known for her kindness and sharp wit. Eliza stood at the edge of the gathered mourners, watching as they lowered Charlotte into the ground. Adrian stood at the front with Charlotte's husband, his face carved from stone. But Eliza could see the grief underneath, the weight of another loss, another person gone from his carefully controlled world. After the service, people dispersed slowly. Eliza started to leave, planning to return to London the next day. Adrian's voice stopped her. Stay. He was standing a few feet away, still in his formal mourning clothes. Please, just for a few more days. Adrian, I know you have obligations in London. I know you've built a life there. But Charlotte, she would have wanted you here. And his voice cracked slightly. I need you here. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Eliza looked at him. This man who'd ignored her for 3 years, then loved her too late, then spent 8 months proving he could be worthy. He looked broken, lost, human. I'll stay, she said. Relief flooded his features. Thank you. That evening, after the last guests had left and the house had finally quieted, Adrian found Eliza in the library. She was sitting in her old spot, the chair by the window where she used to steal moments of peace. May I join you? He asked. Eliza gestured to the chair across from her. Adrian sat, and for a moment they just existed in silence together. Two people grieving the same loss. She loved you, Adrian said finally. Charlotte. She told me once that you were the best thing that had happened to this house in years, that you brought light to the shadows. She gave me everything when I had nothing. She gave me something too, perspective. Adrian looked at Eliza. She used to lecture me about you, about how blind I was, how foolish. She saw what was happening before either of us did. What was happening? Me falling in love with someone I was too scared to acknowledge. You becoming too strong to settle for half measures. He smiled sadly. She was right about both. Eliza's throat felt tight. I miss her already. So do I. Adrian was quiet for a moment. She made me promise something before she died. Made me swear I'd tell you the truth, the whole truth, without calculation or strategy. What truth? Adrian took a deep breath. That I'm not a good man, Eliza. I'm selfish and controlling and emotionally stunted. I've spent my whole life valuing duty over people, efficiency over connection. Charlotte knew that. She loved me anyway, but she knew. Adrian, let me finish. Please. His gray eyes held hers. I'm not a good man, but I'm trying to become a better one. For you. Because of you. These past 8 months, I've been learning to see people instead of functions, to feel instead of calculate, to be human instead of just a title. I know, I've seen it in your letters. The letters are easy, words on paper, carefully considered, but here, now, with you in front of me, his voice roughened. I don't know how to do this, how to be vulnerable, how to ask for something I desperately want while respecting that you might not want it back. Eliza set down the book she'd been holding. What do you want, Adrian? You. A life with you. Not as my companion or my convenience, but as my partner, my equal. He leaned forward, intense. I want to wake up every morning knowing you chose me. I want to argue with you about estate management and household decisions and what to plant in the south garden. I want to read beside you in this library and hear you hum when you think I'm not listening. I want everything, Eliza, all of you, all of it. Her heart was hammering. And what if I can't give you everything? What if I'm still too scared, too damaged from years of being invisible? Then I'll wait until you're ready. And if you're never ready, I'll accept that too. Because loving you means respecting what you need, even if it's not me. Eliza stood, crossed to where he sat, looked down at this man who'd been cold and distant and was now offering her everything with trembling hands. I'm not ready, she said quietly. His face fell, but he nodded. I understand. I'm not ready, she repeated. But I'm closer than I was. 8 months ago, I was running from you, from both of you, because I didn't trust it, didn't trust myself. But now I'm starting to believe that maybe choosing someone else doesn't mean losing myself. Not if it's the right someone. Not if they see me as I actually am. Adrian stood slowly. They were close now, close enough that she could see the hope and fear warring in his expression. And do I, he asked, see you as you actually are? You're learning to. Eliza smiled. Just like I'm learning to see you, the real you, underneath the Duke and the title and the control. What do you see? Someone lonely, someone scared, someone trying desperately to become more than what he was raised to be. She reached up and touched his face. Someone I could love. Someday. When I'm ready. Adrian closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man starved for affection. I'll wait, he said. However long it takes. I know. Eliza stepped back, her hand falling away. And that's why I might actually choose you. Because you're willing to wait, because you're not demanding or assuming, because you've learned to see that I'm worth the wait. She turned toward the door. Where are you going? Adrian asked. Back to London, back to my life. I have responsibilities there, people who depend on me. She paused in the doorway. But I'll be back. Not to stay, not yet, but to visit, to see you, to keep building whatever this is between us. And what is it? This thing between us? Eliza smiled. Possibility. Just like you said. Just like I promised Charlotte. She left him standing in the library, hope written across his face for the first time since she'd met him. And as Eliza climbed the stairs to pack her belongings, she realized something had shifted. For 8 months, she'd been building her own foundation, proving she could survive, could thrive independently. She'd done it. And now, from that foundation, she could choose something more. Not out of desperation or need or fear, but because she wanted to, because she was strong enough to risk it. The next morning, Eliza returned to London with one of Adrian's letters tucked in her pocket, and Charlotte's last words echoing in her heart. Choose love. It doesn't mean giving up yourself. For the first time, Eliza thought she might actually be brave enough to try. The first snowfall came early that year, blanketing London in white by mid-November. Eliza stood at her window watching the flakes drift past, thinking about Charlotte, about promises made at deathbeds, about possibility. It had been 2 months since the funeral. 2 months of letters from Adrian that arrived with clockwork precision every week. 2 months of careful honesty, of walls slowly coming down on both sides. And 2 months of Eliza trying to figure out if she was brave enough to risk everything she'd built. Miss Harrow? Cecilia appeared in the doorway. Mother wants to see you in her sitting room. Eliza found Mrs. Thornfield at her desk, reviewing what looked like financial documents. She glanced up when Eliza entered. Sit, please. Mrs. Thornfield set aside her papers. I wanted to discuss something with you, Cecilia is engaged. Eliza blinked. I'm sorry, what? When did this happen? Last night, Lord Pemberton proposed at the theater. Cecilia accepted. Mrs. Thornfield's expression was satisfied. It's an excellent match. His family is old money, he's kind, and most importantly, Cecilia actually likes him. That's wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you. But this creates a situation for you. Mrs. Thornfield folded her hands. Once Cecilia marries in the spring, she won't need a governess anymore, which means your position here will end. The words landed like stones in Eliza's stomach. She'd known this was coming eventually. Governesses were temporary by nature, but knowing didn't make it easier. I understand, Eliza said carefully. I'll begin looking for new positions. That's not what I'm suggesting. Mrs. Thornfield leaned forward. Miss Harrow, you've been more than a governess to this household. You've been a friend to Cecilia, a capable manager when I needed assistance, and frankly the most competent woman I've employed in years. I'd like to offer you a different position. What kind of position? My companion. Permanent, not temporary. With wages double what you're earning now, full room and board, and a position in the household that reflects your actual value rather than some outdated notion of governesses. Mrs. Thornfield's sharp eyes studied her. You'd have independence, security, and the freedom to build whatever life you choose. What do you say? It was everything Eliza should want. Security, stability, a permanent position with a family she'd grown to care for. But instead of relief, she felt something else. Trapped. May I have some time to consider? Eliza asked. Mrs. Thornfield's expression sharpened. This is about the Duke of Blackthorn, isn't it? I don't know what you mean. Don't insult my intelligence. The man writes to you weekly. You've visited his estate twice in the past 2 months. And you have that look about you, the look of a woman trying to decide between safety and risk. Mrs. Thornfield sighed. I've been where you are, Miss Harrow. I chose safety when I was young. Married sensibly, built a stable life. It wasn't a bad choice, but sometimes I wonder what the other path might have looked like. What other path? The one where I chose what I wanted instead of what was practical. She stood, crossing to the window. I'm offering you security, Eliza, but security isn't the same as happiness. Only you can decide which matters more. After Mrs. Thornfield left, Eliza sat alone in the room, her mind spinning. 2 paths stretched before her. One was safe. Permanent employment, financial stability, a life she controlled. The other was terrifying, taking a chance on love, on Adrian, on the possibility that choosing someone else didn't mean losing herself. She pulled out Adrian's most recent letter and read it again. Eliza, the estate is covered in frost this morning. Everything looks like glass, beautiful but fragile. I keep thinking that's what I feel like lately, like I'm made of something that could shatter at any moment. I don't know how to be vulnerable. I'm learning, slowly, but it doesn't come naturally. Yesterday I had tea with the vicar's wife and actually asked about her family instead of just discussing parish business. She looked so shocked I thought she might faint. I know that's pathetic. That most people manage basic human conversation without making it an achievement. But for me, it is an achievement. Every small connection, every moment of actually seeing people instead of functions, it's all new territory. I'm telling you this because I promised honesty. And the honest truth is I'm terrified I'm not changing fast enough. That by the time I become someone worthy of you, you'll have already chosen a different path. But I'm trying. Every day I'm trying. Yours, Adrian. Eliza traced the words with her finger. She could hear his voice in them, that careful control masking genuine fear. He was trying, really trying. Was she? That night, Eliza wrote 2 letters. One to Mrs. Thornfield, asking for a week to make her decision. One to Adrian, telling him she needed to see him. Not through letters, in person. His response came by express courier 2 days later. Come, I'll send a carriage, just tell me when. Eliza packed carefully, told Cecilia she'd be gone a week, and climbed into the Blackthorn carriage on a gray December morning. The journey to Kent felt different this time. Not a desperate rush to a deathbed or a flight from impossible choices. This was deliberate, intentional. This was Eliza choosing to find out if she was brave enough for the risk. Blackthorn Hall looked stark against the winter sky. The gardens were bare, the trees skeletal. but smoke curled from the chimneys and lights glowed in the windows. It looked lived in, warm, even. Adrian met her at the door himself. No butler, no formality, just him, in shirt sleeves despite the cold, hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "You came," he said. Relief and anxiety warred in his expression. "You asked me to." "I've asked before. You didn't always come." "I wasn't ready before." Eliza stepped inside, handing her cloak to a waiting servant. "I am now, or I think I am, or I'm trying to be." Adrian smiled, tentative, uncertain. "That's honest, at least. Come, I've had tea prepared in the library." They walked through the familiar corridors together. Eliza noticed small changes, fresh flowers in the entrance hall, despite the season. A portrait of Charlotte hung in a place of honor. The overall atmosphere felt less cold, more lived in. "You've been making changes," she observed. "Trying to. The servants think I've lost my mind. Apparently asking about their families and actually listening to their answers is considered deeply suspicious behavior for a duke." Adrian's tone was self-deprecating. "But I'm learning that people work better when they're treated like people. Revolutionary concept, I know." In the library, tea was indeed waiting, along with something else, stacks of papers spread across the desk. "What's all this?" Eliza asked. "Estate plans. I wanted your opinion on something." Adrian gestured to the documents. "I'm reorganizing the household management structure, creating a proper estate manager position, someone to oversee the day-to-day operations with actual authority and decent wages. I was hoping you might help me determine fair compensation and responsibilities." Eliza stared at him. "You want my help with estate business?" "I want your expertise. You ran this household more efficiently than I've ever managed. Your insights would be invaluable." He paused. "Also, I wanted to show you that I value your mind, not just your presence, that I see you as a partner, not a decoration." Something warm bloomed in Eliza's chest. She crossed to the desk, studying the documents. They were thorough, detailed, genuinely well thought out. "This is good work," she said. "The wages are fair. The responsibilities are clear. But you're missing something." "What?" "Housing. An estate manager needs proper accommodation, not servants' quarters. It's a position of authority. Treat it like one." Adrian immediately made a note. "You're right. What else?" They spent the next hour going through the plans together, debating, refining, occasionally arguing about details. It felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of attempting it for the first time. Finally, Adrian set down his pen and looked at her. "I've missed this," he said quietly. "Not the work, though that's valuable, but this. Talking with someone who challenges me, who sees what I'm trying to do and helps me do it better. I've missed it too." Eliza surprised herself with the admission. "Mrs. Thornfield is wonderful, but she doesn't need my opinions on estate management. She has her own systems, but this, using my skills for something substantial, I've missed that." "Is that why you came? Because you missed the work?" "No." Eliza met his eyes. "I came because I needed to know if what we've been building through letters is real, if it translates to actual life, or if it only exists on paper." And I don't know yet. It's only been an hour." Adrian laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. "Fair enough. Then let's find out. Stay the week. Let me show you who I've been trying to become, and you can decide if it's enough." So Eliza stayed. The first 2 days were strange. They circled each other carefully, establishing new boundaries. Eliza had her old room back, the small one in the family wing, not servants' quarters. Adrian insisted she join him for meals, but didn't push when she needed space. They fell into a routine. Mornings, Eliza would walk the grounds or read in the library. Afternoons, Adrian would find her and they'd discuss estate matters or books or nothing of consequence. Evenings, they'd have dinner together, then separate to their own pursuits. It was domestic, comfortable, terrifying. On the third day, Adrian asked if she'd ride out with him to visit some of the tenant farms. "I've been trying to be more present," he explained as they rode through the frozen countryside. "Actually knowing the people who work this land. It's harder than I expected. I don't know how to talk to them without sounding like I'm interrogating them about crop yields. So don't talk about crops. Ask about their families, their lives. What if I say the wrong thing? Then you apologize and try again." Eliza glanced at him. "You're not going to be perfect at this, Adrian. No one is. But trying imperfectly is better than not trying at all. They stopped at the Miller farm first. Mrs. Miller answered the door with flour on her hands and suspicion in her eyes, until she saw Eliza. "Miss Harrow, I heard you'd left for London. Are you back then?" "Just visiting," Eliza said warmly. "How are your children? Is Thomas over his cough?" "He is, thank the heavens, and Mary's engaged to the blacksmith's son." Mrs. Miller beamed. "You remembered his name. Even with everything you had to manage, you always remembered." They were invited inside for tea. Adrian sat awkwardly at first, clearly uncertain how to navigate the informal atmosphere, but he watched how Eliza interacted with the family, asking genuine questions, listening to answers, treating them like people worth knowing, and slowly he started trying. "Your son works in the stables, doesn't he?" Adrian asked Mr. Miller. "How is he finding it?" The conversation that followed was stilted, but genuine. Adrian listened when Mr. Miller talked about his son's aptitude with horses. He asked follow-up questions. He didn't once mention yields or productivity. As they rode back to the hall, Adrian was quiet. "That was hard," he finally said. "I know. I felt like an imposter, like I was pretending to care about their lives when really I've spent years not caring at all." "But you do care now," Eliza said. "That's what matters. Not that you were perfect, but that you tried." Adrian looked at her. "You make it look easy. It's not. I just learned young that people matter more than efficiency. My father taught me that. Even as it destroyed him financially, even as society punished him for it, he never stopped seeing people as people." Her voice tightened. "I spent 3 years here forgetting that lesson, making myself a function instead of a person because it was safer. You're not the only one who had to relearn how to be human." They rode in silence for a while. Then Adrian said, "I'm glad you're here, not just for the estate advice or the company, but because you understand what I'm trying to do. And you don't let me get away with half measures." "Is that what you want? Someone who doesn't let you get away with things?" "It's what I need." He smiled slightly. "Want and need aren't always the same thing, but in your case, I'm fortunate they align." That night, after dinner, Adrian asked Eliza to walk with him in the portrait gallery. "I want to show you something," he said. He led her to a painting she'd never noticed before, a woman with dark hair and warm eyes holding a small boy. "My mother," Adrian said quietly. "She died when I was 8. Fever took her in less than a week." Eliza studied the painting. The woman looked kind, real. "My father loved her," Adrian continued. "Genuinely, deeply loved her. And when she died, it broke something in him. He shut down completely, became nothing but duty and control. He raised me the same way, to never care too much, never feel too deeply, because feeling meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. That's a terrible lesson to teach a child. It kept me safe, or I thought it did." Adrian turned to face her. "But what it actually did was make me half alive. I went through the motions of living without ever really feeling it, until you." Eliza's breath caught. "You terrified me," Adrian said. "Because looking at you meant feeling things I'd spent my entire life avoiding. Want, need, hope, fear, all of it, all at once, and I had no idea how to handle it, so I didn't look. I convinced myself you didn't exist because existing meant caring and caring meant risk. And now I'm tired of being safe, tired of being half alive." He took her hands. "I'm still scared, Eliza, terrified that I'm not enough, that I'll fail you, that I'll revert to the cold man I was raised to be, but I'm more scared of living the rest of my life without you." Eliza's heart was pounding. "Adrian, I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I know you need time, but I needed you to understand why I was the way I was, and why I'm trying so hard to be different." His grip tightened. "You asked once if I see you as you actually are. I do. But I also see who you could be, who we could be together. And that's worth the risk, worth everything." Eliza looked up at him, at this man who'd been ice and was learning to be fire, who was trying so hard to become someone worthy of love. "I see you too," she whispered. "Not the Duke, not the title, just you. Adrian, flawed and scared and trying. Is that enough?" She thought about Mrs. Thornfield's offer, about safety and security, and the life she'd built independently. She thought about Charlotte's last words, "Choose love." She thought about her parents, how love had destroyed them financially but never broken their connection to each other. And she realized something. Safety wasn't living, it was just surviving in a prettier package. I don't know if it's enough, Eliza said honestly, but I want to find out. Adrian's eyes widened. You mean, I'm tired of being careful, tired of protecting myself from possibilities because they might hurt. I've spent 10 months building a foundation strong enough to risk something, and I think I want to risk you. You think? Eliza laughed, surprised by the sound. I'm terrified, Adrian. This could be the worst decision I've ever made. You could disappoint me. I could disappoint you. We could try this and fail spectacularly. We could. But we could also succeed. We could build something real, not despite our flaws, but because we know what they are and we're willing to work around them. She squeezed his hands. I can't promise I'll always be brave, or that I won't panic and run when things get hard, but I can promise I'll try. Is that enough? Adrian pulled her close. It's everything. He kissed her then, not desperately or possessively, but with a tenderness that stole her breath. It was a promise, a beginning. When they finally broke apart, Eliza was shaking. I need to return to London, she said. Adrian's face fell. You're leaving? I have obligations. Cecilia's engaged. I need to help with wedding preparations, and I need to speak with Mrs. Thornfield about her offer. Eliza smiled at his confused expression. She wants me as her permanent companion, good wages, security, everything I should want. And you're going to refuse? I'm going to thank her for the opportunity and give my notice. Eliza felt giddy with the decision. Because I'm choosing something else, something terrifying and impractical and possibly completely insane. What are you choosing? You, us, this. She gestured between them. I'm choosing to see if we can build something real together. Not as duke and companion, not as master and employee, but as equals, as partners. Adrian was staring at her like she'd just offered him the world. Are you certain? He asked. Because once you make this choice, I'm not letting you go easily. I'll fight for you, Eliza. I'll fight for us. Good. Because I'm going to need someone to fight with when I panic. Eliza was half laughing, half crying. I'm going to need you to remind me that I'm strong enough for this. That choosing love doesn't mean losing myself. You're the strongest person I know, Adrian said fiercely. And I promise, I swear, I will spend every day making sure you know that choosing me was the right decision. They stood together in the portrait gallery, surrounded by generations of veils who'd valued duty over everything. And Eliza felt the weight of history shifting. This was different. They were different. Eliza returned to London 2 days later with a lightness in her chest she'd never felt before. Mrs. Thornfield took her refusal with surprising grace. I expected as much, she said. You have that look about you, the look of a woman who's made peace with risk. I'm terrified, Eliza admitted. Good. That means it matters. Mrs. Thornfield smiled. I hope he's worthy of you, Miss Harrow. You deserve someone who sees your value. He's learning to. That's enough. Cecilia was less philosophical. You're leaving to marry a duke? She squealed. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. I'm not leaving to marry anyone. I'm leaving to see if we can build something together. Eliza hugged her. There's a difference. Not much of one. He'll propose within a month. Mark my words. Cecilia was wrong. Adrian waited 3 months. 3 months of Eliza dividing her time between London and Blackthorn Hall. 3 months of learning each other's rhythms, testing boundaries, building trust. 3 months of arguments and reconciliations and slowly becoming certain. Then, on a cold March evening, Adrian found Eliza in the library at Blackthorn Hall. I have something to ask you, he said. Eliza looked up from her book. What? He knelt. Her heart stopped. I know we agreed to take this slowly, Adrian said, and I know 3 months isn't very long in the grand scheme of things, but I've wasted enough time being careful and calculated, so I'm asking now while I have the courage. Adrian? Eliza Harrow, will you marry me? Not because I'm a duke and you need security, not because of duty or convenience or anything else practical, but because I love you, because I want to spend the rest of my life learning to be better for you, because you make me want to be human instead of just functional. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, with a green stone that caught the light. I had it made specially, he said. Your favorite color? Because I see you, Eliza. I finally, truly see you. And I'm asking you to let me keep seeing you for the rest of our lives. Eliza's hands were shaking. You're sure? I've never been more certain of anything. I'm going to be difficult. I'm going to challenge you and argue with you and refuse to be decorative or silent or anything else society expects of a duchess. I'm counting on it. And I'm going to panic sometimes. I'm going to remember what it felt like to be invisible, and I'm going to test whether you still see me. Then I'll spend every day proving I do. Adrian's voice was steady. Eliza, I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for real, for honest, for whatever we can build together, flaws and all. She looked at him. This man who'd learned to see her, who'd changed himself not to possess her, but to be worthy of her choice. And she realized the answer had been inevitable from the moment she'd decided to risk. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her close, and Eliza felt something settle in her chest, not just love, though that was there, but recognition, certainty. This was right. They were right. Imperfect, flawed, still learning, but right. The wedding was held at Blackthorn Hall in late spring. Small, intimate, just family and close friends. Julian attended, bringing his new companion, a wealthy widow with sharp wit and sharper business sense, who clearly had him wrapped around her finger. You were right, he told Eliza privately. What I felt for you was admiration, not love. I was trying to save you because saving people made me feel useful, but you didn't need saving. No, Eliza agreed. I needed to save myself first. And now? Now I'm choosing to share what I built. That's different. Julian smiled. He's lucky. You both are. The ceremony was simple. No grand speeches, no elaborate vows, just two people promising to try, to see each other, to value each other, to build something together. When Adrian kissed her, Eliza tasted promise and possibility. And when they walked down the aisle as husband and wife, she felt the weight of 3 years of invisibility finally lift. She was seen, she was valued, she was chosen. But most importantly, she had chosen herself first, and that made all the difference. The reception was held in the gardens. Spring flowers bloomed everywhere, including green roses that Adrian had cultivated specially. Music played. People danced. Eliza stood at the edge of the celebration, watching the life she'd built unfold around her. Adrian appeared at her side. Having second thoughts? Third and fourth thoughts, actually, but I'm still here. He laughed and took her hand. Come, dance with your husband. That's going to take some getting used to, being someone's wife instead of someone's companion. You're not just my wife, you're my partner, my equal, the person who keeps me human. Adrian pulled her onto the dance floor, and occasionally drives me absolutely mad with your stubbornness. Good. You need someone to drive you mad. Keeps you from getting too comfortable. They danced as the sun set over Blackthorn Hall, and Eliza realized this was what she'd been fighting for all along, not to be saved or claimed or rescued, but to be seen, to matter, to build a life where she could be wholly, completely herself. It had taken losing everything to find it, had taken 3 years of invisibility to understand what being seen truly meant, had taken running away to learn she was strong enough to run back, but she'd done it, on her own terms, in her own time. And now, dancing with the man who'd learned to see her, Eliza Harrow finally felt like she'd come home. Not to a place, but to herself. Years later, when people asked how the Duke and Duchess of Blackthorn met, they told different stories. Some said it was a romantic whirlwind, love at first sight between a noble duke and a mysterious woman. Others whispered it was scandalous, a duke marrying so far beneath his station. But those who knew them best, who saw how they worked together managing the estate, how they challenged each other constantly, how they'd built something real from broken pieces, they knew the truth. It wasn't a fairy tale, it wasn't perfect, it was something better. It was two people who'd learned to see each other, really see each other, and chose to build a life together anyway, flawed, honest, real. And in a world that demanded perfection, that was the most radical choice of all. Eliza never forgot what Charlotte told her before she died. That choosing love didn't mean giving up herself. She proved it every day. As Duchess of Blackthorn, she transformed the estate's management, gave the servants real wages and respect, opened schools for tenant children, and refused to be decorative or silent. She was impossible to ignore. Not because someone finally saw her, but because she'd chosen to see herself first. And that made all the difference.